Hello, this is Henry. I'm a doctor in regional Australia, coming at you live from the lands of the Yorta Yorta people. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. This year I'm giving half of everything I earn to organisations around the world making the world a better place. I've been incredibly lucky in the opportunities I've been given in life and where I've been born and the people I've been born to. Everything's gone right, and for a lot of people in the world, they haven't been as lucky as me, and it's not all that fair. And I feel like maybe we have a responsibility, if we've been really lucky, to help others that haven't been as lucky. So that's what I'm trying to do. It's hard trying to figure out how to make the world a better place with money, but I think just because it's hard, we shouldn't try at all. And I'm trying to do my research. I'm relying on the opinions of global development experts and on grassroots knowledge of people living the world's problems. I'm also trying to rely on the results of trials. It's a trend that's kind of emerged in the last couple of decades in global development to rely on trials of different projects around the world to figure out what actually works, what actually improves people's lives. And then I'm relying as well on the advice of people out there like you, whoever's watching this or watching what I'm doing, and the advice of people around me. And I'm very keen to hear from anyone what sort of comments they have, suggestions on what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, what I could be doing differently. So this past fortnight, and this is the pyramid scheme, by the way. This is my donation strategy, the pyramid scheme. I'm giving money to great charities. I'm giving even more money to really, really great charities, and that's the scheme. This past 2 weeks, I've given to the Malaria Consortium and the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. And I only realised last minute that I've given to 2 consortiums. This is the consortium week at the Workathon. The Malaria Consortium is a preventative health charity, preventing people from getting sick, much, much better than treating people once they are sick. Slightly less exciting, slightly less maybe satisfying because it's less obvious, but it's incredibly cost effective and much better for the person as well because they never get sick in the first place. Malaria is a really bad disease. It kills over 400,000 people every year, and most of those are children because malaria is a parasitic infection where it's spread by mosquitoes, and if you get it a few times, you become kind of resistant to its effects. So you still get it, but it's a more mild form. So it's children who've never had it before that are the most susceptible. The Malaria Consortium's a big organisation that it does a few things, but its program of seasonal malaria chemoprevention gets a lot of attention from, well, it's mentioned by GiveWell, for one, the charity evaluator, which focuses very closely on impact as a way to measure which charities we should be giving to. Because malaria chemoprevention is, it involves basically giving someone a medication that means they're less likely to get malaria in the first place. The way that Malaria Consortium does it, they mainly operate in sub-Saharan Africa, which is where malaria is endemic. And it's where, I suppose, resources are often lacking to prevent and treat malaria effectively. It's incredibly cheap to provide anti-malaria medication. It costs about $7 US dollars, so what, about 10 Australian dollars to give a child a course of medication that stops them from getting malaria. Not doesn't stop them, but makes them about 50 to 75% less likely to get malaria. It's cheap and it has real effect. So if it costs about $10 or $15 to stop a malaria case, and malaria is kind of like COVID actually, in that it has a very low fatality rate, but because it's so widespread, that fatality rate adds up. So I think it's about a fatality of 1% or something like that. And if you're thinking about the numbers like that, $15 to prevent one case, you start looking at, a number of a few $1,000s is saving lives, which is pretty amazing. So I think the Malaria Consortium is a really cool charity, and GiveWell, as I mentioned, they've provided this. They've written a fairly extensive report looking at the evidence and how the Malaria Consortium runs, and do they actually get the malaria medications out to people? Do those medications actually help people? And it looks like they do. It looks like it's a pretty effective intervention. So I'm very happy to give some more money to the Malaria Consortium, another $2,361 to the Malaria Consortium. And the other organisation that I've given to this paycheck is the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. And journalism's not something I've given to before. Thanks, Chris. Love you. Journalism is not really something I've given to before. Journalism is the kind of thing, it's very hard to put a number. You can put a number on malaria. You can put a number on giving someone malaria medications and how many lives that saves for how many dollars. But something like journalism, as well as most things, how can you put a number on the good that journalism does? Exposing corruption and, keeping a watchful eye on people and kind of creating, exposing corruption, crime, unethical behaviour, which is what journalism is all about. It's very important, and obviously the world would be a much worse place without it. But how do you put a number on kind of the good that that's doing anyway? I think what the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists does is very cool. It's an international organisation. It brings together journalists from all around the world to work on these huge investigative, huge kind of investigation programs. They mainly use leaked data, so data that's been usually illegally released from various organisations or governments, and then they do exposés based on that. They're probably best known for their work on the Panama Papers, and the Panama Papers is the name given to 2.6 terabytes of data that was illegally released from the Panamanian law firm Mossack Fonseca back in 2016. And within these 2.6 terabytes of data were, I think, 2 million documents or something relating to about 300,000 different shell companies that Mossack Fonseca specialised in setting up offshore shell companies in the Cayman Islands and Nauru and Ireland and wherever else, where, if you happen to have a company, you pay much less in taxes. And so it's a way for people who can afford those services, to afford to set up shell companies, to pay very little in taxes. And it's not illegal, that's kind of the thing. Almost none of what Mossack Fonseca doing was strictly illegal, though I think some legal cases have come out of it. It's just exploiting massive loopholes in the international tax system. So it's not illegal, but, is it ethical to, when you have such enormous resources, to, not give it to building infrastructure and creating meaningful jobs for people, or to providing malaria medication to people, but instead into trying to avoid paying as much tax as possible, and then, investing that in buying up half the world as investment property, or purchasing super yachts or luxury cars. I think in exposing this kind of stuff, and they expose a lot of this stuff, not just the Panama Papers, tax avoidance, but also corruption, government corruption, and money laundering as well. I just think in exposing this stuff, it's I think there's a real value in that, and potentially might kind of wake people up a little bit to what's going on. Wake up. Wake people up a little bit to what's going on, and might move us towards finding some solutions, which I think could be really good in helping out some of the people that are missing resources the most. So this is the website for International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, and they run on about $4 million or so a year. So enjoy your extra $100. Drop in a pond. I think an individual can make a difference, though. I think these numbers add up, and the more of us that do it, the more it is. which is great. I'm very keen to hear from anyone what you think about what I'm doing. I'm very keen to hear if you think I'm donating to the right people, to the wrong people, if I'm going about it all the wrong way. Should I just be keeping my money to myself in an offshore company in Ireland or Trinidad and Tobago? I don't know. Maybe I should. All the best. And until next time, goodbye.